So, hello. Here we have the next exciting conversation, and I'm really happy to introduce colleagues at today's panel discussion. Still, they show how to find the best publisher. So, let me introduce shortly. Um, Here we have Ekaterina Dekalenkova, senior business developer and market analyst at Ketchapp from Ubisoft.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you and pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. I'm not sure about the name, but Balaji, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you, head of publishing at Sunday.
Hi, thanks for inviting. And based out of Hamburg, Germany, and happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, Roee Raz, founder and CEO at OVIVO Games.
Hello, great to be here. Thank you very much.
Nice. And Enes, co-founder at Bandit Games. Hello.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for invitation. I'm connecting from Turkey right now.
Great. And I'm Alex. My role is a moderator of today's panel. Thank you for coming, and I would appreciate if you could shortly introduce yourself. Speaking about your company, what does your company do, and what's unique about your company, and what is your personal and your company's relation to the game publishing?
I can start if you want. So nice to meet you. I'm Ekaterina, senior business developer and market analyst at Ketchapp. I have been working for them already for almost 3 years. And Ketchapp is basically a hyper-casual publisher, a pioneer in this business, which is on the market for almost 8 years already. And we are part of Ubisoft family, yes.
I can go next. Yeah, I'm Balaji, head of publishing for Sunday. We are relatively new in the game. We are about 3 years old. We are known mostly for our hit game Ketchapp, and we are part of Apply Group. What makes us unique is through our sister companies, we have not only games publishing, we focus only on hyper-casual games, but also at monetization, and now we have our own MMB, so we have more insights than depending on third-party data, and we help that to help our developer partners make more profitable hit games.
I will take it from here. So I'm Roee Raz, founder and CEO of OVIVO Games. I'm a veteran within the gaming industry with more than 10 years of experience in user acquisition, monetization, BI. I founded OVIVO 3 years ago as an innovation publishing house specializing in hyper-casual games who are based in Tel Aviv, Israel. You asked to tell about what's unique. So we have developed a unique publishing approach that is very different from most of the mainstream publishing houses that actually increase the game developers' chances to get published. We are looking like the chances to getting published, in other words, generating profits or building a business with OVIVO are 20 times higher than any other, what I call the mainstream publishing alternative. So we are constantly looking for high potential mobile games and game studios to partner with, publish their games, and help them build a successful business.
And I'll go next. I'm Enes Kaan Boyar. I'm co-founder of Bandit Games, and I have been in hyper-casual gaming industry for 2 years right now. I have started my career as a Unity developer, and I have co-founded Bandit Games in the beginning of this year. And how we are related to publishing is we are a hyper-casual gaming prototyping development studio, and we are working with publishing partners, and that's how we are related to publishing.
Thank you, guys. It seems like all of you have pretty meaningful experience with publishing. Someone did themselves, and Eunice, you have experience from another side, from the side of the developers.
Yes.
So this is absolutely unique and interesting to discuss. Okay, but do we really need publishers in the era of information availability, DIY tutorials, and direct access to ad networks? where everyone can register by themselves. What are the pros of working with a publisher?
Well, I'd love to take it. I think that in this era, still there is a huge need in collaborate or partner with a publisher. The publisher is the one who actually bring the game to the market and help making a successful business from the game. The investment from the publisher side is huge, starting from funding the user acquisition spend or the user acquisition budget with pretty high risk, managing the user acquisition, managing the monetization, build the creative, playable ads, video ads, analyze the performance using sophisticated BI tools, collaborate with a lot of partners, networks that the developer probably don't have access to. I already mentioned the BI part in order to, and this is important because we want to make sure that the data, that the actions that we'll take will be 100% data driven. And here there is also the psychological thing because the developer most of the time is like more attached to the game, and we want to not fall in love with the game and look only on data. So here is another good reason to collaborate with the publisher. And I would say that if you are a gaming studio and you have all these capabilities in-house, go for it. And you're willing to risk your funds, so go for it. Better to self-publish. But in any other case, go find your best publisher. I would add another tip. I would say if you can run in-house as a studio, like you can run in-house marketability tests and go to the submit the game to the publisher with actual results on the CPI, then you might have a better, an advantage on the negotiation maybe with the publisher. But this is my answer.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you.
I'm totally agreeing with Roy. And nowadays, I think the main added value of a publisher comes from the fact that they allow to compensate for a studio all the things they might lack internally. So that might be some things which are too expensive to acquire for an independent studio or too long to gain. So it's market expertise, it's advice on game design, that may be some tools and dashboards which probably will allow you to do your job more efficiently. And of course, like skilled UA specialists and marketing campaign budgets, they are really hard to get if you don't team up with a publisher. So it's better to ask for some help on the publisher side, definitely.
Thank you, Katerina.
Just to add to that, I would say, if it really depends on the stage of your studio and your goals, right? Apart from the finance and all the support that Katerina mentioned as well, I think personally it helps you fail faster when you work with the publisher. I mean, as a studio, you would fail probably, 4 to 10 times in a month. A publisher fails 200 times in a month, right? So, or more in that case. So, if you want to pick, and also if you have successful tests, let's say you have successful 2 or 3 tests, it helps you prioritize which one to bet on, because the expertise a publisher can give you is about you picking, if a game that can be profitable with $50,000 or like $500,000 or even less. So and publishers are more than willing to share this data with you. But also, like, if you want to try new genres, or if you're entering the market, or especially now because the market has changed so much in the last 1 year, right? Making sense of what's happening and avoiding self-doubt, it's better to get more of this intelligence and data from the publisher and align yourself. Of course, it also comes with your cons, depends on like how much the publisher has really learned and what they share with you. But when you have a healthy relationship with the publisher, most of them are really transparent these days. It helps you lessen your burn, let's say, or like lengthen your roadmap, right?
Thank you.
And I can say I agree with all of you. And as a studio, I can say that it's really hard to compete with strong publishers if you try to self-publish your title yourself. And considering all of these, the pros of working with a publisher is more than the cons of them. So I don't think you should consider about the cons of working with a publisher if you don't have the power to compete with them, actually.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Actually, you mentioned a very interesting point that there are some cons of working with publisher. Just to be fair, let's highlight them. What are cons of working with publisher?
Like I can take it from where I left. I mean, each publisher have their own strength in the market, according to me. Some are like really good in some genre of games. Some are really good in monetization aspects. Of course, there are a couple of publishers who have their own ad networks that give them that gives like a kind of unfair advantage. But also, I think in the age of post IDFA, it's more in their bucket on their moat of users. So if you are making a puzzle game, for example, or if you're making a runner game, it really helps you to then align yourself with someone who can monetize those games of better. But also then the con is then you can't. They lack the expertise if you want to move to another genre, right? That's one con I can think of. The other con is, of course, depends on the type of contracts you have. If you're exclusive, then you're kind of tied with the publisher for that exclusivity period. And then sometimes when you are exclusive, it also gives you this nice padding of financial, what do you call it, a financial moat or a strength that is hard to let go of if you grew your team according to your agreement with the publisher, depending on the money that you get from them, right? So your financial moat makes you take less risks in that perspective when you want to switch publisher, because the other publisher might not be able to match the same financial benefits that you get.
Thank you so much. Very interesting.
I think there is another con I can mention. Of course, in addition to, you will need to sacrifice, if you publish, you need to sacrifice part of your share, of course, obviously, but that should end up I mean, it's okay if the publisher is doing a great job. But I would say that there is a risk when you publish a game that during the test phases, you will get what I say, like what I consider it as a false positive result. Like you will get a reject for your game on the first test, and you will end up the process after you invested in the game and you got the reject from the publisher. And it's most of the time, or not most of the time, but there are cases where you get a reject and the game can be successful. It's just not successful enough for that specific publisher. And that's a risk, because if you keep, in this mindset of trying to publish your game with a publisher that not meets your goals, I mean, your goals and your publisher goals not necessarily are the same, then you're in then you at least need to be aware of this risk. The publisher goal might be to hit the charts. Most of the time is to bring the game off the charts, while sometimes the studio is more interested in just generating a successful business with profits that might hit the charts later, but also might not, but still generating profits. So that's kind of risk or con that I would.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. Sharing your profits with a publisher, that might be that's a negotiation point which you need to treat carefully, etc. But on the flip side, like Balaji said, publisher can support you while you're in a search for the next hit, which will support you financially with some payment per prototype or with some burn rate deals. However, there is something which we tend to hear a lot from our partners. A lot of them have actually a previous bad experience in communication with a publisher. They often say that the publisher wasn't allocating enough attention to them, or because making a good product nowadays, it requires a lot of back and forth, and this back and forth can become a bit jammy, and that can be due to a couple of reasons. First of all, it may be because the publishing manager has a lot of workload and he just can't cope with all the workload and he answers you slowly, or it might be because you are not in their top priority list and they allocate more attention to some other studios who are have bigger potential in their opinion. And in any case, if the communication is a problem, it's so important that you probably would rather switch a publisher which doesn't pay attention to you or doesn't value you enough. There's fortunately plenty of choice on the market, and try to find a partner who's caring for you.
Yeah, just to add to both what Katrina said and Roee said, really try to mitigate the situations to your contracts. For example, if most of our partners have this in the agreement, if we are not able to scale a game, then they can self-publish or go to another publisher. We actually don't care. If we can't, then we can't, right? So try to, and that can be a red flag for you if you don't have that flexibility while working with the publisher.
Yes, totally.
Thank you so much. Enes, so many comments from publishers. I would love a couple of comments from the developer.
Yeah, of course. And actually, yeah, I totally agree with all of those cons, especially with the revenue share part. But some problems are actually more important than the revenue share, because you can't consider the revenue share considering that the publisher is also taking the most of the risk with you, at least 50% of the risk, and they're supporting you with whole process until you get to find a hit game. But as Balaji said, the biggest con of working with a publisher is sometimes some publishers actually limit your ideas, your games, with their focus, and if their focus is on runner game, and you think you have a promising puzzle game, you have troubles with even prototyping that game, and that actually limits your portfolio and limits your genres that you are developing. And one day, if you have a promising game, just because you're working with a publisher who has a limited focus with a specific genre, you can't launch a title with the idea that you have already thought before some other developer. I think that's the most important con of working with a publisher.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's say now I'm a very much inspired game developer, convinced I need a publisher. How do I understand this publisher is for me? Which parameters and conditions should I look at, and how to understand other publishers are not the best choice for me and my game?
And if you want, I can start as a developer here. And I have been in this process before a lot of times. And first of all, you need to have a passion to launch a title instead of just saving the day, I think. You should actually calculate your studio expenses before, because when you I'm talking about looking for a partnership with a publisher instead of just submitting a game. And you should calculate your expenses before, because you may not have a partnership with a publisher for a long time. And I have been working with no payments because over a year almost, because just trying to find the best publisher, and all those expenses I have covered all those expenses myself. And if you want, you can work with KPI models also, but here you have some expenses, and the only thing that publisher can help you with this process is the payment per prototype or fixed fee business models. And at this point, you should have a portfolio, a developed high quality portfolio before going to deal with a publisher. And at that point, as I said, you may not find the right one for a long time, because some publishers have some testing periods which test your communication between publishing managers and your studio. And at that point, after the testing period, either side can stop this collaboration, the development studio or the publisher side, because you may not have a healthy communication, or as I said, some limited focus on some specific genre. And if you are happy with, if you both are happy with the testing period, you may keep working with the publisher for a longer time. But as I said, at this point, you should consider working with no payment for a long time, and you should develop your prototypes in high quality to sign a deal with a publisher, as I said. This is a very long period, but you should think about all the processes, like working with no payment and covering your own expenses at this point.
And at the moment, I see that probably a good choice how to distinguish it from everyone else, how to understand this company is for me.
Yeah, of course, when trying to find a publisher for yourself, there are some parameters, and I think besides the revenue share and the payment amount, I think there are some more important things to think about, like your, as I said, the most important thing, the limited focus on some specific genre. But at this point, when you don't need the money if you can't launch a title, because those development costs are only helping you to cover your expenses, but you can't be rich with these expenses, and you can't make a title of your own studio with these expenses. You have to launch a hit game to be successful, actually. And at this point, you should consider talking with publishers about the metrics that they need, because there are some big publishers that they don't even iterate the game with instead if the game doesn't meet the required KPI metrics for them. And some, as I said, the big publishers have really harder KPI metrics at that point. But some publishers can help you with this process, because when you have an idea, promising idea, and you believe your idea, you test the game, and the KPI metrics don't meet the required ones, but if they seem promising, you can have a deal with the publisher to iterate the game and try to, even let's say the CPI is low, but the retention and playtime is higher. At this point, you can deal with the publisher with iterating the game, but some of them are just killing the process right there. And as Roee said for the previous questions, the studio is about profiting with a game, but the publisher, most of the time, publisher pays to get to the top charts. At this point, you should talk with the publisher and learn about their KPI metrics, and that's more important than the payment amount, actually, and the revenue share, because the revenue share is the amount of money that you can get from the publisher if you successfully launch a title. But if you don't meet the required KPIs for the publisher to publish the game, you can't make a revenue. So that revenue share or the payment per prototype amount is not really important at that point. So the first, if I have to order them, the first important thing is the guidance of the publisher from datas and guiding you about the game design. And the next thing is the KPI metrics to launch a game. And the last thing to think about is revenue share and the amount of payments, in my experiences.
I think.
Yes, please.
May I add to what Enes just said? I think that the studio needs to decide what is objective, like what is main strategy, and everything, and according to that, decide which publisher to go with. I mean, if your strategy, long-term strategy, is to get paid for prototypes, go for the publisher who will pay you the highest amount for a prototype. If your strategic goal is to generate a hit, go to a publisher who proven and generated already hits, but know that the chances are like, I know, 1%. But again, if this is your decision, go for it. And if your decision is to generate decent amount of profits from couple of games with higher success rate, then choose a publisher accordingly. But you just need first to understand what's your goal, and then accordingly to choose the publisher.
Thank you so much.
That's actually so true. But in my opinion, if you are just thinking about making some profit with prototype payments, I don't think that's more likely than just launching a game. Because if you're not successful and if you're not having any promising games until some time working in the industry, it will get harder to find a publisher that will pay you for prototypes. So your strategy should actually be making a hit game rather than making money with prototype payments. Actually, in my opinion,
I suggest a different approach. Instead of making $1 million per game, let's make $1 million, but based on 10 different games. And managing the risk.
I would, just to add to this, I would really go back to the drawing board, ask this question, like, why are you working with a publisher, right? It's a given in today's date. You can't work without payment as a developer. Very, very, very few can, and those who can are already like self-publishing in some way, right? So, and then it's about like, okay, what is the financial support you need? And then at least in today's market, I personally feel the days of blue sky ideation are gone. And then you need to really focus on specific kind of products you need to work if you're talking about profits, right? Also, how do you define hit games? Is it like on the number one chart, like Roee mentioned, that can mean that you actually don't make money, but be in number one. But that can give you the publicity to probably hire your employees saying, hey, we are the makers of this number one game. So really think about the strategy on that quarter, like really break it down. But really, in today's date, we all say content is king, right? And if you can make good content, you're the king makers. So you have the liberty to, as publishers, test developers. As a developer, you have complete freedom to test publishers. So just test like 2 or 3 publishers and see like what works for you. And sure, have your paper prototype build. That does make that you lose this long-term visibility of getting the financial support in terms of retainer or whatever. But again, retainer comes with exclusive most of the times, right? But if you're willing to take that risk, and if you're really confident about the content that you can make, and you're really clear on what kind of products that you want to make, then you can test the publishers on these specific things. Like I want to make puzzle games for the next 2 quarters. So see if that falls in the publisher strategy. Do they have the expertise? And if they have that expertise, do they provide you that support? Also things like what you guys mentioned, like how many studios or how many games per publishing manager works with, right? That goes a big into like what kind of bandwidth they can give for you. And then make your decisions based on that, right? Instead of like signing up with the first publisher that you come across. Of course, it really depends. If you're a new studio, you don't have that much choices. Every publisher wants to see like what kind of portfolio you have or what kind of games you already made. So, but then work towards your long-term strategy.
Thank you so much, Ekaterina. What can you say? How can I identify my publisher?
That's not easy. You need to try a lot of things. You need, first of all, like until you try, you will never know is it as good as it looks on paper. So, but there are some tips to save up time, I would say. So try to communicate as many publishers as you can, like drag them to the calls and torture them with questions. So if you want to check them whether they are ready to dedicate some attention to you, ask them, do they mind coaching you? Do they have an experience of like coaching a studio up to a decent level? Releasing a successful game, for example. You can also try to ask them a question about how many projects per publishing manager do they have. That's usually a really good indicator how much time they'll have for you. Also, some interesting trick which you can try to do is ask the publisher representative to provide you feedback on the spot on your prototype. This way you can see the overall quality of feedback in the company. If someone who holds your game can on the spot tell you like, here we need to change that and that, that's probably someone who would provide even deeper analysis if they have some time to think, etc., etc. Also, like for the lack of transparency, it's also an issue for a lot of developers. Ask what KPIs you'll have access to, through which means. Is it a dashboard? Will they show it to you? Are they ready to disclose their budgets, for example? Ask them to read your contract and gather just as much information as you can, and then compare it and see how it aligns with your goals, which you have personally as a company.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Okay, we're talking about tough questions. Let's talk about it even more and about some limitations. How much is it common and necessary to sign any kind of publishing exclusivity for a game, still keeping a publisher's business interests safe? Actually, I've heard some stories from several developers about games being stuck at the publisher's side because publisher holds the exclusivity, but is not ready to do more steps for the game's success. And the developer feels like a hostage, forced to abandon the game. Is it really necessary to sign any kind of exclusivity with the publisher?
So
In terms of what, the game or the studio, or for perpetual, it really depends what kind of exclusivity you're talking about. Sure, as a publisher, you need some exclusivity to a certain period to work on the game, but it's super common for you to ask for a publisher if you're not able to do anything with it for 4 months or 6 months from the first test, then you give it back. But also it depends on the overarching contract you have, right? For example, if you sign the exclusive contract as a studio for 6 months, 1 year, then it would be not in the publisher's business interest that you try with someone else, because you also gain some knowledge out of it, right? And the publisher is taking the risk on you by financing you for the whole year anyways. So it really depends on both these aspects.
Yeah, I will add to this that I totally agree, and I will say that the publisher can't be in a position where, after all this investment is exposed to the developer deciding at any time, for any reason, he wants to publish the game with a different publisher. It just makes no sense. It makes sense to define in the publishing agreement in what conditions there is a stop for the agreement and the game can be sent back to the developer. It should be defined as part of the agreement, but exclusiveness is
just to give you an example, we have so many developers say we have a ready game, we want to test with you, we don't want to get into any exclusive agreement till the first test, then that's also okay, because we don't invest anything, just a test, right?
Sure.
So it really depends on what investment the publisher puts up front.
Sure thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And as a studio, I can add some stuff for those comments. And it actually depends on the kind of exclusive agreement, as Balaji said. But as we have talked about the strategies, and it actually more depends on what kind of things the developer expect from a publisher. At this point, exclusivity is not necessary, but it is necessary if you need financial support, because if you are having an exclusive, or if you have having any kind of partnership with a publisher, it means that the publisher is investing on you, and that means they covered the expenses for you to develop that game, that prototype. So that gives them the right to keep the rights of the game exclusive for themselves. But at this point, you should choose the publisher that you are going to sign an exclusive deal with, depending on your strategies. At that point, you shouldn't. Of course, sometimes you feel stuck at this point, and it doesn't actually always about testing a game, exclusivity of a developed game. Sometimes it's also about if you are having a partnership with a publisher, you have to take their confirmation about developing that game. And if they reject your idea to develop it, you can't even develop that game. And I have lost not one but two hit games because of that. The publisher rejected my idea because they had limited focus on some genre, and that games became a hit game after like 1 year or 6 months. And at that point, exclusivity is necessary if you need financial support from a publisher. But choose the publisher that you are going to exclusive with, depending on your strategies. Because, as I said, some publishers really want very less CPI metrics or very high retention metrics just to launch the game. As Roee said, some of them are going for the top charts. If you're working with a publisher like that, you will not be able to monetize your game, even if it's promising for a soft launch or like making not $1 million, but making some profit of the game. If you're working with a publisher who goes for top charts, you will not be able to develop and iterate and launch that game and make profit from that game. So choose your publisher to go exclusive with, depending on your needs, actually. And exclusivity is necessary at that point because you need financial support. But it's really important if you meet on the same idea to launch a game with the publisher at that point.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ekaterina. What do you think?
I think that exclusivity is actually not that necessary. Well, none of our contracts is exclusive, even actually those with financial support, because, well, we value the freedom of our developers, and if they want to work with us on this game, they'll trust us and they'll still work with it. However, we sign contracts for one certain game, like each contract is basically for one game. And for this game, we agree to actually work together on it. And we love to set in stone all the KPIs, all the rev share before the test. And also to set up clear and transparent rules before the test for the developer, so we both know what to expect in case the game gets good metrics. This way, first of all, we can't change our mind. If we promise the developer the 40-50% revenue share, he will have it, whatever the results are. It's also very important if we are working on bonuses at KPIs model. So if we agreed, and it's set in stone, the contract is signed, and the developer will have his bonus. Also, for those who are worried about their IPs, that might be a big thing, because our contracts are, for example, keeping the IP for the developer, and this way, for example, he can be sure that it's for him, and we just have like an exclusivity right to use it. But it's just for one game. If he wants to try different publishers or explore something on his own, he totally can. And as far as the question of being stuck, for example, with a game where publisher does nothing on it is concerned, well, as soon as we kill the game, we instantly give all the rights back to the developer, and he can do whatever he wants with the game. So, and it doesn't have any lock. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
By the way, we also never own any IPs.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty that the age of owning IPs by the publisher is gone.
Yeah.
Same way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Let's talk about the developer. What should a developer do to get the best conditions from a publisher when publisher wants to offer the best conditions, and what important conditions should be discussed at all besides the revenue split, of course?
How can start if you want as a developer.
Yeah.
And what should a developer do to get the best conditions from a publisher is, as we have talked about it, if you are going on the same goal with the publisher, you should prove that actually you are going with the same goal with a publisher. And besides having promising metrics, even if you don't have the promising metrics, sometimes the publisher can still give you the best conditions to work with them. If you are really having a healthy communication with your publishing manager and implementing their feedbacks fast and as how they want on your games, as how your publishing manager tells you, actually it really depends on having a healthy relationship and communication with your publishing manager at that point. And some what are the important conditions could be besides revenue split is, as we talked, the most important condition is actually that publisher giving you the value that you and care your studio, and they don't actually just try to they see you as one of the million studios, but they care you even if you are not exclusive. The most important things, the condition should be them carrying you like their exclusive studio, I think, besides the revenue split at this point.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay.
I would add to what Enes said, that you need to know that you need to make sure that and to know first that there is a chance that your publisher and your goals are not the same. You're not the same size. You're not managing the same size of operation. The publisher operation might contain a huge head count versus a pretty lean amount of pretty lean head count on the studio side. The business model is very different. I mean, the publisher tests tons of games a month, and most of the time the studio will work on very few prototypes or one single game on the same time. So the volume is very different. So you need to ask what's the goal of the publisher, and ask for full transparency about that. Ask what the chances to publish your game with the publisher, and make sure that the publisher will give a fair chance to the game to succeed. Because again, there is a chance that the publisher will reject the game, and not because the game is not good; it's just not good enough for the publisher. So you just need to know that, and ask for full transparency about this process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
I would say that mostly like the conditions and the set of conditions which are available for developer, it a lot depends on the portfolio, on the technical skills, on market understanding. But the most precious thing which we can find on nowadays market is the capacity of delivering stable quality fastly and in a stable manner. So when the publisher understands after some time working with you that you are such a studio, then he will probably unlock many of opportunities for you, and he'll be very much interested to keep you. Try to discuss like some flexibility issues. Probably you can be interested in working on some publishers' IPs which are belonging to them. We know some such crossovers like that. And also, the more you trust each other, the more publisher is sure that he can trust you. The more flexibility he'll give you on workflow, on conditions, on prepayment, and many other things.
Thank you so much, Balaji.
Just to add to that, I would really say it depends on the your goal and the stage of your studio, right? Like for example, we had so many studios who started with two people or three people, or even solo developer, but really had big dreams. And then we had an open conversation about, okay, you want to grow your studio and why and how much. And then even if there is it's really impossible for the first, or let's say it's going to be not possible that much in the first 3 months you produce a hit game, right? So for us, it's about like seeing the long-term vision and like funding that failures. And then what do you give in return for that? It's really up to you. But as long as we don't work in terms of a numbers or goals. For us, like CPI is like it's relative to the LTV, right? We're focused on making more profitable games. As long as your your focus doesn't change from what we agreed on, we are ready to fund it. And again, in return, we don't differentiate between paper prototype or exclusive or retainer. For us, everyone is possible to become a long-term exclusive partner. So we have the same standard of service. So apart from the financial, like we also have this model. For example, if a game is scaling in the beginning, we are able to forecast like the revenue that we can make in a year or 2 years, and we give a big revenue guarantee in advance so that they can start hiring for the next hit game. So that's one thing. And the second thing I think, which is super important in today's age, is that you push the publisher for as much information as possible in terms of market intelligence or publisher's own intelligence while ideation. Let's say you want to make like X type of game. Every publisher has access to more than one kinds of market intelligence tool, and they can tell you, okay, if you want to make this game, this is the possible LTV, and this is like the possible CPIs, right? Then you decide what to do with it. But most important, like analyze, okay, what made the marketability videos successful. You can like break it down and get publishers. Was it the color palette? Was it like what happened in the first 5 seconds? Really break down this storyboard of this marketability videos and try to like incorporate those things early on so that you can like win faster and win early.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, let's stress a little bit more the part. Another part of the question: what should the developer do to be the best partner for a publisher from the publisher side of view? Ekaterina has already stressed the communication side, the stability to hear feedback. What else? How to be the best development partner for the publisher?
I think you mentioned.
Sorry. Yeah, Roy, please. Yeah.
I think you mentioned the main things like communication. I would add like execute fast.
It's not
yeah, move things fast. Speak openly. I mean, if something disturbing you, speak about it. Speak about it openly. Be like proactive and it will feel that you are part of the, like you're passionate about what you're doing. This is what's important to us: communication, execute fast, and passion.
Thank you, Roy. Balaji, what do you think?
Yeah, from Sunday's perspective, I can say, like, on the communication part, like, I would like to see how, like, what kind of help you ask, like, really ask for any help you need, right? Even if you're having, like, problems, like in pandemic times, there were so many people who fell sick. Just be open about it. Okay, we can't just produce this month because it is this, and the publisher is more than happy to support you. But also things like, okay, we are trying to make this product, but we don't understand what's making a certain product successful, or why are we failing, and try to do this retros with your publishing manager. I think. And then for me, what I like to see is, like, how do you take one learning from one product to one prototype to the other, right? And if you can evaluate that, you will make a hit game someday. And it's more about this long-term partnership that you bring to the table in terms of product thinking, learning, and also, like, working together closely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Ekaterina, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I would say that we in Ketchapp like fast learners, and that's also like the golden quality for hyper casual market, which moves so fast. So we invest like a lot of times in our developers, and when we see that actually it gives its fruits, that their quality of our prototypes is improving from game to game, we absolutely want to keep them. That's the best people, and it's just a matter of time when they release a successful game. So, and probably there is something more. So as basically the product itself gets more complicated and it relies more and more on not only on trends and just being pleasant, but into something deeper, like on game feel, on mesmerizing visuals, on addictive core loop. And we are trying to theoreticize it, to make some presentations around it, like you could see, for example, in our presentation about like emotions in the UA, or about cognitive biases. And when the developers are understanding those kind of stuff and they integrate it successfully in their games, they can definitely boost the potential of any prototype they're making. And of course, like, as we research it on our side, we try to put it into kind of short, digestible presentations in order for everyone to get a bit of this knowledge and to understand better how to do it. But if the studio already possesses such qualities, such an expertise, that's something which is worth a lot, I would say.
Thank you so much. Enes, from your point of view, how to be the best partner to the publisher?
Yeah, I actually agree with what all of you said. It's really not necessary to hesitate about your studio's conditions and try to gain some time. Just be open to your publisher about your situations, and if you don't, that would actually disturb the communication, as we specified as an important condition, and it would actually disturb the trust too. And the trust is about not just about this kind of communication. The trust to your publishing partner is also about for the execution part, because sometimes we as studios, we can feel so emotional about our prototypes and think like it's gonna rock the world, but the publisher can consider that in an more objective part, as they have more data than us, and they are more experienced about game design than us. And at that point, you have to trust your publishing partner and don't actually try to execute your idea over and over. Just trust your publishing partner, and if you also want to execute your idea, explain it well to your publishing manager, and at that point they also should trust you. But if they say it's still not gonna work, just trust them. The trust is also more important for a relationship with publisher.
Thank you so much. Several of you guys have stressed the point to communicate when something goes not as planned. whatever at a certain stage a developer will discover there is some expertise missing on his side, and the deal is signed, the development is running. What do you do in such cases?
I can give you a specific example on this one. Like, for example, lately, the market shifts change so much that most of the ideas don't work, right? So we had so many developer partners since we have this open communication relationship, we just can't ideate. Now, usually when a developer tells you this, that's a red flag. But what do you do with the studio that can't ideate, right? So what we came up with, then we went back internally, understood like what's the problem, and how can you solve this problem, and basically how do you enable the developer, not just one person or a game designer, but the whole team to ideate or help generate ideas that are more relevant to the market. We came up with a framework that we rolled out I think 6 weeks ago, and now we see that the developers are not only able to ideate but having more success with the marketability test. So and of course it's not like the magic wand, but it's a tool that we were able to develop because the developer partners asked for help. Otherwise we would never have done that. So I would say the publisher is more than happy to help you in most cases if you share even your very, very core, the so-called existential problems, because you're like, what do you do with the game studio that can't ideate? But again, it's not a red flag for us, but it's actually good that someone is so open about such issues with us. That helps us help them. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So in our case,
Yep, sorry. Yeah.
I would just add for this that it's very dependent on the skill that is missing. In most cases, we also aim to cover the lack of knowledge or lack of experience of the developer with our team. Like we do have in-house Unity developers, designers, to try to cover such cases. But in really cases where the developer needs to handle a big task and you can't do it. So in this case, and the publisher, in this case, we want to publish this game, then the developer will be asked to actually move the game to our account. Like it's in our account, but to move and teach our team how to manage it, and we will manage it on our side. The same vice versa. I mean, which more common where the publisher decides to not publish the game, send it back to the developer, and in this case, when the developer can't support anymore and can do, and we are stuck. So at least he needs to be responsible enough to move the project to our hands. Again, if we do want to publish the game, but it's a very rare scenario.
Thank you so much.
Based in reality, but just in the
it's rare, but it's a fear of falling. What if I sign a contract, and what if at a certain stage I will fail? What happens? Will they put me to jail?
Mm-hmm. I think once you deal about this scenario with just simple logic, then everything much more simple. You can't force someone who don't have skills to learn and and invent a new skill. It's just not.
Thank you so much.
Well, on our side, I can say that in real world prototype development, a lot of things can go wrong, and it depends where the issue comes from. I think in the beginning you need a really transparent discussion with the developer when you discuss where does he need help. Maybe it's like game design advice, maybe it's creatives, maybe it's something else. We can produce some, either ask some help from our internal team or provide some learning materials. At the worst case scenario, if a developer is unable to finish the game and it has good KPIs, we can rediscuss the conditions of a contract and, for example, transfer it to our internal team and still make him have some revenue share since the IP is his. And of course, well, there is also a set of external factors which are coming quite often recently, you know, like with a pandemic or with a war in Ukraine, for example. We, in both cases, we needed to adjust. We wanted, first of all, to make sure that all of our partners can work safely, can keep their employees, can take a break if needed. That's like their basically well-being is our paramount priority, I would say. And then only in the second time we can discuss with them what can we do in order to come back to the previous production at their own pace, of course. So everything is discussable. I think the key is to discuss with your publisher and have a trust in it.
Thank you so much. Tough question. Have you ever been in a situation when you see two similar promising games from different developers? What do you do?
All the time. I mean, simultaneous innovation or invention is not. It's like not new, right? Even telephone was invented by two people at the same time, though we only remember one person for it. So, in a field like hyper casual, and products are so inspired by charts or familiar elements, it happens all the time. The best way to go about it, according to me, is to openly talk about it to both the people. But I have to say, from experience, it rarely happens that both games make it. There's usually one thing or more than one thing in one game that is different than the other, that makes the difference between the a hit or not a hit. But when such a case happens, we are quite transparent to those two or three parties, saying, hey, we are testing the similar games, but we don't share the data from one game to the other, right? They all have equal chances to make it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, we
Roee?
have a similar approach. We also warn the developers if there is some similar idea developed internally or with someone else. So basically, at the stage of approval of the idea, we either tell them that it's already being developed, either we tell that plus the fact that, okay, this field is still interesting, let's explore it. And we suggest to take some turns, probably develop some distinguishing features which will make the games different enough for them to both have potential to succeed. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Roee?
I agree with everything that my friends here mentioned. I would just add that the idea is one thing. There is a huge other thing, which is the execution. And here it's a lot depends on how fast the studio executes. So yeah, I agree. There is the idea, but there is also a weight on the execution part.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys, I appreciate your time. The discussion was absolutely amazing, very inspiring, and you are ready to openly and straightly answer such a complicated and sometimes tough questions. I'm really amazed at how cool to work with you and how lucky your developers are to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.